Well, good afternoon, everyone. I know you've had a lot of information. Patricia is going to start with our inspections. I do want to let you know we have 275 inspections that are due between now and the end of the fiscal year. So inspections are pretty important. And then I'll talk about the biennial recertification, and we have almost 100 of those. So this is really important. So if you don't mind to just hang in a little bit longer, and we'll talk about this. And then Molly has some really great news for you towards the end of this session. So let Patricia take it away. You want to introduce who you are and where you are?
Hi, my name is Patricia Bryan. I am the supportive housing specialist. My role is to make sure that we find safe and affordable housing. I'm also going to have on doing this presentation is Taekwon Butler. He's also going to be assisting me with part of the inspection process. So I'm going to let Ty start. Ty, if you can share the screen, and then we will begin. Can you see it, Ty?
All right, good morning, everyone. Once again, my name is Taekwon Butler. I'm a supportive housing specialist here with Alliance in Mecklenburg. So let's go ahead and start. So what's required for passing inspection? In the bedroom, at least one window and one closet, 2 outlets or 1 outlet, and permanent light fixtures. In the space, must have a living room, bedroom, kitchen, and bathroom. Each living space must have 2 forms of egress, a door or window, The windows must be intact, operable, and secure. All exterior doors must lock properly. No peeling paint. Oh goodness, sorry. What's required? Electrical, light fixtures, switches, and outlets must work properly. Breaker box must be covered and protected. Smoke detector on each floor and working properly. Heating and cooling units are in a proper working condition. In the structure, the walls, ceilings, roof, free of cracks, leaks, and holes. Floors and steps free of trip hazards and uneven flooring. Handrails present and secure. It's important, and secure. Unit free of infestation, and the bathroom must have either 1 window or a ceiling fan. The most common missed items are or reasons for failing, non-functioning smoke detectors, cracked or broken window panes, furniture blocking the doors and the windows, inoperable or missing electric stove burners, leaking faucets, poor water pressure, plumbing, and infestation. And so I'm just going to put this picture here. Do you think this passes or fails? If y'all want to put it in the chat, let's just see what we get. I got a no. It doesn't pass. All these fails, and an explanation, can't see the door. Okay. Christy thinks it does pass. Paulie got it for us, and so did Monique. All right. So yes, this would actually, even though this room is very tidy, the bed is in front of the window, and because of that, it will fail an inspection. It's an easy fix. Just remove the headboard or relocate the bed. So good. Y'all got it right at the end.
Absolutely.
All right. Now we're into the creepy crawlers, the nasty parts. Bed bug infestation. As y'all see in the little picture, they get in your clothes, they get everywhere. We don't like that. So bed bugs. All landlords must provide premises free of pests. The landlord may contact a licensed pest control company to receive certification stating the property is free of bed bug infestation. If a tenant discovers an infestation within 60 days of renting, or the landlord has a certificate of inspection, the tenant is responsible for the extermination. The tenant only has 7 days after the discovery of bed bugs to have the unit treated. Why is my tenants must inform landlords in writing within 5 days of discovering an infestation. If the tenant is within 60 days of renting and the landlord did not certify the unit, the landlord only has 5 days after notification to have the property unit exterminated. I hear someone have a question. Okay. All right, continued for bed bugs. If the landlord did receive certification, then it is the tenant's responsibility to exterminate the unit within days of notifying the landlord. If responsible tenants do not take action, the landlord has the right to exterminate the property at the tenant's expense, evict the tenants, or sue the tenants. Likewise, if the responsibility falls on the landlord and no action is taken, the tenant has the right to sue the landlord. Under no circumstances may a tenant withhold rent without written approval of the court. All right, Ms. Patricia.
Okay, then so let me take myself off and mute. One of the things about inspections, and we do it annually, we do initial inspection before the tenant actually moves into the unit. And we also do an annual inspection, which is every year the unit must be inspected. And one of the things that makes sure that the unit is habitable. We run into a lot of problems once the tenant gained possession of the unit. And so therefore we have to come in and do an annual inspection. And then there's some things that we're going to talk about later on in this presentation about a special inspection and emergency inspections. So we need to talk about that as well. So go to the next slide. Okay, we all ask, this is what we're asking from Alliance. We ask that all of the providers be present during the inspections. And one of the things is, the reason for that is that the tenant, or, and I say tenant, and sometimes I may go from tenant to members, because they are familiar with you, more or less us. So you can actually do like a special inspection, a self-inspection checklist, and come with some of the things that you can see. You probably can't see this as clearly, but it will be part of the presentation and you can review it later. All right, time. Communication, the communication process. How does the landlord want to communicate? The landlord wants to be communicated about repairs and maintenance issues, standard and as they occur. Notification before entering a unit. Time afforded to landlords to make repairs or schedule. How landlords document and resolve tenants' damages must be repaired. Written documentation, written communication is the best line of communication. A walkthrough of a unit prior to a lease. What is the actual walkthrough? A walkthrough is simply what it is. It's a walkthrough of the unit. One of the things before a tenant takes possession of a unit, make sure that you walk through the unit with the tenant. A lot of the times the tenants don't see the units before leasing up the units. We want the tenant to view the unit with you as the provider as well as the landlord. One of the things also before you do the walkthrough, take pictures. Is there damages? If so, notify the landlord. If possible, we want you to see the landlord with the tenant, see the unit with the landlord so you can point out certain things that needs to be repaired. Okay. And providers are expected to be there doing the walkthrough and doing the annual inspections. Now we're going to talk about the types of failing inspections. Failing inspection, one of the things is an emergency fail. An emergency fail is issued when an occupied unit poses a dangerous to life-threatening condition that is not remedied. You could possibly cause harm to the occupant. The items on the warrant of no running water, no electricity, gas, no heat in the winter, no hot water, no natural gas leak, fumes. If you smell the fumes, yes, that is an emergency fail. That means that a inspector needs to come in immediately. There's no smoking equipment is not working, and there may be a spark from a circuit creating a fire hazard. Inhabitable units due to fire, tornado, flood, destroyed, or vandalism that would prevent the tenant from using the bathroom or kitchen. So those are emergency fail. Automatically, that unit would definitely fail. Go ahead. So here are some consequences, failure consequences of an emergency fail. Due to severity of a violation within 24 hours, it has to be reported. A re-inspection will automatically be scheduled within 24 hours of the violation and must be corrected by the time of the re-inspection occur. If the violation is the owner's responsibility, then the owner will be notified by telephone, followed by a written notice outlining the violation and the appropriate corrective actions. Failure to correct emergency violation may be in a time frame, may be in an abatement of the HAP agreement of the owner to the owner. So an abatement is when we suspend the HAP. And once you suspend the HAP, that means that the owner is not actually going to get paid for that unit. Okay. So the type of other failing special is major. Major is issued when there's multiple minor failed items. So, and these items are, for example, like no working burners, no working oven, a broken window, loose or handrail on the stairs. So whether or not that failed item is considered major is determined by reliance upon the review of the completed inspection report. So here are some consequences of a failed inspection, a major inspection. If the unit fails and an inspection with a major fail, the inspector will provide the owner a written notification listing all of the deficiencies causing the unit to fail, giving the owner 10 calendar business days to that date of notification to correct the deficiency and contact an inspector to schedule a re-inspection. Okay. So major, and here are some other things. If a major fail is issued to initial or re-inspection, if the unit fails at the first re-inspection for what is classified as a major fail, the inspector will determine whether the second inspection is justifiable. So for example, if an inspector go into a unit and they said that it's going to be a major fail and there's no way that the landlord will be able to do the repairs, it's considered a major fail, and the inspector can and will make the determination if it's going to be justifiable to go back and do an inspection. We may be able to have to look for another unit for that individual at that time. But if the landlord can do some of the repairs, and then we could actually give them at least 30 days to make those repairs. Okay. Minor, here's some minor fails. Minor fail items are the ones where the resolution of the problem is simple, affordable, and does not pose an imminent threat to the health and the safety of the tenant. So it's not a significant hardship. Minor fails is caused by, for example, it's like one broken stove burner, garbage piles on the property, trash cans that's not available, or the unit is not clean, a missing outlet. So those are some minor fails. So the inspector will not fail if, if you just have like, there's a burner, there's 4 burners on the stove and one is not working. The inspector would not fail the unit, but give the owner of that property 14 calendar days to correct that issue before the tenant takes possession of that unit. Go ahead. Tenant caused inspection, failure, and maintenance issue. All HQS fail will be handled by the program inspector at the same repair requirements, regardless of whether it's a violation or whether it's caused by the tenant. Emergency fail issues for electric, gas, and water and other essential shut off. And sometimes we see that a lot, like tenants will not pay the gas, electric, and water bill, and that they, so those things are not operating in the unit. So that can be grounds of termination from the program. So one of the things, and that's why a lot of times we ask, you guys are our ears and eyes on these properties. And if you go in and you see that the tenant doesn't have the utilities connected, doesn't have gas, it doesn't have additive gas, it doesn't have water connected, please let us know. We may be able to help that tenant so that tenant can actually remain in that unit and assist. Maybe some kind of financial stuff is actually going on with the tenant. We don't know. Maybe they may need a pay service so they can assist with some of these paying some of these items. So to avoid that tenant from becoming homeless again, please bring it to our attention, and then we'll see what we can do as Alliance staff to address some of these issues. Okay.
Patricia, there was a question about if there's
Sure.
special assistance to help the tenant pay for treatment in the home so they don't lose housing.
So what are you paying for? What are you special assistance for? What? Like bed bug issues?
Sharon, do you want to qualify? Was it bed bug issues or yes, bed bug issues? If there's, yes.
Yes. Okay. So with bed bug issues, there's a lot of times is that the landlord will pay to have an exterminator come in if it's brought to the landlord's attention. If you recognize there's a bed bug issues, please bring it to the landlord's attention. A lot of times, especially in targeted housing, the state will actually pay for the extermination. But if it's like, and Ty had alluded to this when he did his presentation, his part of it. If you please bring it to the landlord's attention, the landlords will pay for it. Sometimes the landlord will charge if the landlord feels that 60 days you have been in that unit 60 days, and then all of a sudden there's a bed bug infestation. So a lot of times the landlord will pay for that, but then they will also charge the tenant as well. So it probably is going to be a cost on the tenant, especially after 60 days that they have actually been in that unit. Okay.
I think the question might have been, can they use special in-home assistance to cover this?
I cannot answer that question. I know Cynthia did a wonderful job on that. If Cynthia, if you are on the line, can you answer that question? Because I would not be able to answer that question.
Yeah, so technically, I believe extermination services is covered because it helps to keep the member healthy and safe. However, because most folks' special assistance payments cap out between $300 and $400, it wouldn't be enough to cover the expense.
Because the average cost to have a unit inspected is almost like $995. You get, it's 2 fees. You have to pay for an exterminator to come in to identify that, yes, there is a possibility that it's bed bugs. And then you have to pay for the extermination piece. So that's twofold. So yes, it's average about almost $1,000 for a person. And it also depends on the severity of the bed bugs. Sometimes they have to do more than one treatment. What about roaches? Roaches also, if there's a bad infestation of roaches, you can also ask the landlord to do an extermination of that unit. And a lot of times when we go in, a lot of times with roaches, it has been my experience, what is the tenant doing? And sometimes it's not the tenant's fault, because sometimes if you're living in an apartment complex, it crawls from one unit to the other. So, but I know that there is one tenant who has roaches, and he's been going out purchasing things and to assist with that. So he's spraying his unit,
Oh,
trying
yeah.
to keeping the roaches away. Yeah.
Oh, I
Go ahead.
like those shoes. Those are nice. You look cute.
Oh, somebody.
Patricia, I muted you. Can you unmute yourself? I'm sorry. I was muting somebody else and I accidentally.
You muted me.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah. But a lot of times that with roaches, we have to go, when you go in and you see a bad infestation of roaches, you have to see where's the roaches actually coming in. Is it coming from somebody else's unit? Especially if the member has a unit neat and clean. But if there's food particles left out on the counters and you're just kind of feeding the roaches, and the roaches always follow food. If the food is on the counter and there's a problem with housekeeping, yes, the roaches will be there and they will remain there because there's a food source for them. So we talk about if the unit fails HQS inspection, so prior to initial lease up, Alliance will give the landlord time to bring the unit in compliance. Until the unit passes, please, please, please do not sign a lease. Please ask the member until the unit, you get permission, there's a pass on that unit. The tenant is not allowed to sign the lease. And because Alliance will not enter into a HAP contract with that landlord, so that landlord will not be getting paid. So you may have a tenant who has a lease already signed, but that unit did not pass the inspection. And so therefore, we can't enter into a HAP contract. And a HAP contract is a housing assisted payment. It's a contract between Alliance and the landlord. And then we can't enter into that until we actually have a pass unit. So, and at the time of annual inspection, depending on the failed items, the landlord has 30 days to rectify before a HAP agreement is suspended. If failing items are due to the tenant negligence, then the tenant must follow up with the landlord regarding payments planned for repairs. Okay. Okay. So other HQS inspection intervals is special, which is a non-urgent issue in a unit that has not been resolved by the landlord or tenant negotiation. A lot of times if there is something that's actually going on, like it's a special, like there's a leak under the sink or there's running water, please bring it to our attention right away so we can talk. It's a lot of times the landlords, a lot of property providers and landlord will work well with us. And then you also have a lot of property providers that is really hard to reach. And so let us bring it to our attention, bring it to the housing team attention, and we will do whatever we can to try to get in contact with this landlord and see if we can find out what's actually going on. Because if you have a leak under the sink, that's a potential hazard for mold. And black mold is very, very dangerous. And so please let us let us know what's actually going on. If you go in each unit and the tenant is verbalizing to you, or the members are telling you, this is wrong, that's wrong, I don't have this, I don't have no air, my air's not working properly. I've spoken to the property manager and they have not addressed these issues. Please bring it to our attention, okay? And definitely emergency inspections, like I went over earlier, has to be addressed. It's a safety risk and it must be addressed within 24 hours. So please bring that to our attention as well. Okay, next. Next. Ty, is that it? Okay. Code enforcement. Okay. One of the things is that code enforcement is usually always handled by the city of Charlotte. Code enforcement investigate more than 50,000 properties per year. I can say this has been my experience in the past. A lot of times landlords do not like when tenant calls code enforcement because it's a penalty to them. And a lot of times they will try to terminate the lease because you have called code enforcement on that landlord or the particular management company. Please bring it to the housing team's attention and let us see what we can actually do to address what is the problem. If there's a problem, you think that code enforcement needs to be involved with that, please let's have a conversation with that first before the tenant actually call code enforcement. Because once code enforcement comes in and there is a problem or there's a serious concern, that landlord would try and make an attempt to terminate that lease, because that code enforcement, those officers will start charging that property manager instantly. Any questions? I think that's it. That is it for me. Does anybody have any questions about inspections? Denali, was there any questions in the chat?
There's one question regarding payment. So if the landlord for one member won't accept the member's payment because the HAP portion isn't paid, is that normal practice?
Say it again, I'm sorry.
The landlord for one of the members won't accept the member's payment because the HAP portion isn't paid. Is that normal practice?
No, that is not normal practice. So the HAP payment has not been raised. And we have been running into this because since we aligned with from Cardinal to Alliance, there has been several reports about HAP payments not being received. And so what we have to do, bring that to our attention, the housing team attention, and so we can address that and see what's actually going on with the HAP payment. Because the LME or the MCO will pay, but it may be a problem. A lot of our problems now that we're having with a lot of the landlords, that we have to set them up as a vendor. And I think we talked about that early in that early part of our presentation. All property providers and all landlords, they have to be a vendor with Alliance. We cannot issue a check to them or even enter into a HAP contract without them being an established vendor with Alliance. And see, that may be the problem. So anytime that there is a report of a HAP agreement not being paid, please bring that to our attention, because this may be something that we could do on our administrative part.
Yeah, and we have about 42 members who we don't have the vendor profile from the properties right now. That, that's not all the, so like one property might have 6 members, but we have 42 right now that we were not able to pay this month because we don't have the vendor profile. But we also have some individuals who may have had a suspended HAP agreement already in place. And so they got transferred over and we're having to fix it because they have, maybe they haven't done their biannual recertification. Maybe there's some other issues. Their house didn't pass inspection. So there's things that we're trying to figure out as we go. So
absolutely.
yeah. So please let us know if somebody the rent has not been paid, and the team will to kind of research what's really going on. Oops, go back, please. So once again, I'm Larissa Witt, and I'm with the Patricia, and is down in Mecklenburg. I'm in the 5 counties to the north. Patricia is a supportive housing specialist. I'm the manager up here. Her manager down there is Shantae Rouse. She was unable to be here today, but she's my counterpart down there. So I'm going to talk to you briefly about biennial recertifications, not to be confused with biannual. Biannual means twice a year. Biennial means every 2 years. So can you change the slide, please? Next slide. Thank you. So I want you to kind of overview of there's only 3 kinds of subsidies our people get. They either get what's called a KEYS subsidy. So a lot of people misconstrued targeted and KEYS. Targeted is the unit. KEYS is the funding. So we have KEYS funding for tax credit properties. So targeted units are units that the federal government has given these properties, these developers, this money to build these affordable housing. And they get these tax credits, which are very lucrative. And they get those tax credits with the idea that they're going to set aside, they're going to target so many of these houses, 5% of this build, set them aside to be for people with disabilities. Those are the cream of the crop properties. So we want, so those are all of those beautiful tax credit units that we see around our communities. So the unit is the targeted. It can be overlaid with a KEYS subsidy. A KEYS subsidy is a federal subsidy, a state subsidy. It has an annual income recertification, but so some people get them mixed up, but KEYS is subsidy. The second one is Section 8 vouchers. So when we talk about Section 8, that's the big house, right? Section 8 is the part of the federal legislation that describes these vouchers. So some of the vouchers are mainstream vouchers. Those are for people who have disabilities. They are emergency housing vouchers. We've just gotten a bunch of those under the new, because of COVID, there's a lot of emergency housing vouchers out there for people who are homeless. They have to go through the continuum of cares to get those. And then there are like just straight Section 8 houses, vouchers that are for people that are low income. Alliance, we have some partnerships with the public housing authorities. We have mainstream vouchers, and we have some just straight Section 8 vouchers that are prioritized for the Olmstead people with disabilities. So that is a federal voucher that pays for somebody's housing. So they can be on the private sector, or they could have a targeted unit, and we overlay that federal voucher. It too has an annual income recertification. So KEYS and Section 8 are annual. TCLI vouchers, these are vouchers that are paid by the state through Alliance. So Alliance pays the voucher, and we then get reimbursed by the state for to pay for these vouchers. And you'll hear them, TCLV is what we call them. They are state funded. We require a 2-year biannual recertification. Inspections for all of these are annual. The recertification I'm going to talk to you about right now is biannual for only the TCLV. The TCLV, the reason we're spending time on this is most of our people, over 2/3 of our people, are getting TCLVs, that they're in the private market and we are paying their rents and getting reimbursed by the state. Any questions about that so far? Because sometimes I think we all use these words and it gets confusing for people. We'll use Section 8, we'll use mainstream, it will target it, we'll use KEYS, and it can be very confusing. Yep. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go to the next slide, please.
There's a question in the chat, Larissa. They said, is this the TCLB or TCLV?
Oh, sorry. V is in voucher. TCLV voucher. Yeah, sorry. not pronouncing that well. Okay, next slide, please. So under the TCLV, or the Transition to Community Living Voucher, we have some legal obligations, right? They have to have a legal and signed lease agreement for us to pay the rent. So it's got to be a signed lease. They've got to have a HAP agreement, and that's what Patricia just talked about, is a housing assistance payment plan. So we, the member signs the lease, then we come back through our team and says, hey, this is how much our member's going to pay, which is usually for the TCLV, it's 25%. Each program's a little different. Section 8s are 30%. So it's of their income, but it's calculated a little different because under the voucher, they pay 30% of their income, but that includes utilities. So that's actually a little better deal for our people to be on a federal voucher, because these TCLV, it's 25% of their income, but then they have to pay for their utilities. So their rental costs are actually higher. So we want to get as many people moved onto these federal vouchers as we possibly can. They're more secure, and it takes the money out of the state having to pay it, and it puts it onto the federal government, and it's better for our people. Plus, those vouchers are portable. So let's suppose your person is really doing great and they decide they want to move back to home to Louisiana. They can port that voucher to Louisiana and maybe reunify with their families. So those federal vouchers are actually better. But for us, most of our people have the TCLV voucher. So they have to have a HAP agreement signed with the property manager. That's telling the property manager, Alliance, we go into a legal agreement with this property saying that the member will pay 25% of their income, and then Alliance will pay the remaining of the rent. And then all of them have to have an HQS inspection, that higher level of inspections that Patricia and Taekwon just talked about. All participants must recertify their monthly income every 2 years under this program, every 2 years. If they have a small change up to $600, they don't really have to do anything. Their income kind of stays the same. So in that 2 years, if their income goes up to $599, they don't have to recertify their income. So there's a little bit more flexibility. Whereas with a Section 8 voucher, as soon as they change a penny, they have to report it to the housing authority. So each program has a little bit difference, and there's different sections. So next, please. So biannual recertification, it's due every 2 years from the date of leasing, the leasing date. So when it's signed, that's when they have to have it. The documentation must include all members of the household and all income received. Which is great. We want to get ahead of this. We don't want to wait until the lease signing, because if there's an issue, they made more money, or we don't get it done in time, or something happens, we can suspend that HAP agreement will be suspended within 30 days. So we want to get ahead of it. We will send out the notifications 4 months in advance of the due date. So we send them to the member, we send them to the property, we send them to the provider, let you know, hey, this recertification is coming up. Don't forget. And like I said, there's close to 100 that are due right now, between now and June 30th. So we really, our benchmark is to get them done 90 to 100 days. We want them early, because if we don't, so let's suppose we wait until the lease signing and that person didn't give you all their income. And then what happens is we're paying the HAP agreement. So let's suppose they made more money and their portion of that 25% is going up. Then that member is going to be responsible for the difference of that rental amount from the old HAP. And so they're going to owe for really 2 months, maybe 3 months extra. So if we can do it early, we save our people the hassle and the money. So once again, we can pay up to 30 days thereafter. And then, and once again, they could lose their HAP. The HAP agreement will be suspended if this isn't done. Okay, next slide, please. So income eligibility, 25% of their income, as I stated, income cannot exceed $2,000. However, under TCLV, we understand under the settlement, we're really here to support our members. And so with the income, if it's over $2,000, we can put a waiver in there. And some of the waivers, the reasons for the waivers might be is that the person still receives Medicaid or is TCL eligible, or they would lose the rental assistance, which would cause undue burden and financial destabilization for that person. So we can write it, we can do a waiver, but we have to know it. Okay, next, please. So this is hard to see, but you'll be getting these slides. These are kind of the income that we want you to be looking for. So ongoing CLA, we need to make sure that that income is calculated if it's ongoing, that exceeds 4 months. If it's less than 4 months, then it's not considered income. Social Security disability, because it can change throughout the year, we need a document that's no more than 120 days old. 120 days, we need it because it can change. Whereas Social Security retirement does not usually change throughout the year. So it doesn't have to be 120 days new. It can be one that's for the whole year. SA in-home, good news, it doesn't count as income. So that's not going to go against that 25%. So that extra dollars that they're getting in that process, so it really helps them out, and it's not charged against their rent, which is great. SSI is the same, it can change within the year. And so 120 days, they want the documentation that's no older than 120 days. VA benefits is the same. It's usually not changing in the middle of the year. So older than 120 days is good. Unemployment, you want to always calculate at 52 weeks, just because that's the way the rules are written. Even if they only qualify for 32, it's calculated at 52. And then of course, wages. We need to know 2 to 4 consecutive pay stubs to prove what their income is. These are all the things you need to be collecting from your members. And I'll tell you right now, at the end, December and January, everybody got new cost of living allowances for their benefits. And so get that documentation. Ask for your member why they still can find it, right? Can I have a copy of that? And keep that in their folder so that you have it. Once again, it's good for 120 days, but you may have recertifications that are due in that amount of time. So always at the beginning of the new year, ask them for their Social Security letter because it was mailed to them most often. All right, next, please. Okay, so once again, we have to terminate the HAP agreement for the following reasons. If the member is not residing in the unit for more than 90 consecutive days, we have to terminate the HAP agreement because we can't continue paying the rent. Once again, housing inspections, if they fail. And I wanted to briefly about that housing inspection. We've talked about what it looks like, but Alliance, we have a monthly tenancy checklist that all of our members, all 900 members that are in housing we need one of these tenancy checklists for every member in housing. We are getting ready to build out a tenancy database system where you'll be able to put that information right into the tenancy database system. We're really excited about that. It should really help our communication be better for everybody rather than a million emails. But in that tenancy database, the tenancy monthly checklist, it not only has what behaviors you might be seeing or are there concerns, but it also talks about the housing pieces. So for instance, is there evidence that somebody else is living in the home that shouldn't be there? That's our #1 reason people separate out of housing. Why they lose housing is they have unauthorized guests. So it's really important that you're looking at these homes and having these discussions about who's staying there, because that's the #1 reason people lose housing that we have found. We have a lot of other reasons, but that's #1. that tenancy checklist also talks about, you know, is the refrigerator clean? Is there anything broken? Is there evidence that the HVAC system's not working? So you as the provider should be looking at these homes, going through this checklist with the member every month. And it's a great talking tool. And over time, your member can be filling it out and giving it to you. I mean, it's just a really good expectation. And when they go into housing, to really set that expectation, the expectation is you're getting a subsidy that's helping you pay for rent so that you can live here safely. So one of the things we have to do to keep your housing is to do this monthly checklist and get that member used to doing that from the very beginning. And it just becomes a natural part of what the expectations are for housing. It's a great communication tool. And there's 29 questions, and you can go, we've written them, they're written in such a way that if it's no, 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 you just keep it moving. If it says yes to any of them in our new database, it will populate and it will state what the yes is about. Most of the time it's a null question. So no, 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 yes. So it should be relatively easy to fill out. Try to make it as simple as possible. All right. And then once again, they will fail. We will have to suspend if their income recertification is not completed on time. And we definitely don't want to do that. We never want somebody to lose housing because of some administration thing that wasn't done. So it's really it's really to your best interest to make sure your members are getting these things done quickly, because it's a whole lot harder to rehouse them than it is to keep them in housing. All right. Okay, so I think that's all I have. Let me see. Any questions for me? I will say that briefly that there is a document that's that we send out for the biannual recertification, and it's a pretty simple document. It's just asking the things I just said about income and who's living in the house. So it's a pretty simple. We tried the documents for TCL. I'm trying to talk quickly to move on. TCL, we try to make them as easy. They're not like SA in-home. They're a lot easier to fill out. So thank you so much. I'll turn it over to Damali.
Yeah. Okay, we are in the home stretch. I'm going to share some information. And by the way, my name is Damali Alston. I am the Director of Network Evaluation with Alliance. So I oversee all of the teams that do all types of either kind of routine post-payment review provider monitoring and quality of care concerns, quality monitoring activities. All monitoring activities is under my purview. Let me see if I can share my screen. I am going to talk to you all about, sure which screen this is. Let me see if this works. A pay for performance strategy or initiative that we are about to launch. Can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
So there are two components to this strategy. We have been in the works of putting together a value-based payment structure for CST and TMS, particularly targeting performance around TCL for all the things you've heard of in the beginning of this from Rob and from Sam Hedrick around, getting out of the settlement agreement and really making sure that we're providing good quality services to the recipients receiving these services. We also recognize that, each MCO has handled TCL in different ways. And as we have assumed Orange and Mecklenburg counties, that we're asking things of our new providers that you have not been used to as being so involved with and responsible for these members. So therefore, that's what spearheaded this more detailed training today, and then the continued series of trainings to help kind of get you in that process of supporting TCL individuals in a different manner. So the first part of this is for Mecklenburg only providers that are new to our network. And it's really some bonuses around helping members, getting those SA in-home recertifications submitted, getting those biennial recertifications submitted by the due dates, because we do have hundreds, like numbers of those where they're coming up between now and June, they are due. And so we really are going to have a big push and need your assistance with hitting the pavement, working with members and getting all these documents completed and submitted by their due date so that we don't have any issues with individuals losing their housing. The next set of incentives will be for all providers across all 6 of our counties now. So as Larissa mentioned, we are launching a tenancy database. And so we're looking at having 85% of all TCO checklists being submitted monthly by the 15th of the month. We're also looking for, if the event that there is a separation, that you're providing that information in the database on the separation form within 3 business days of the separation. And then timely response to any housing notifications. We'll be able to use this database to communicate back and forth with providers. So if we become aware of that there may be a housing concern or something that's indicated on one of the tenancy checklist, with some of the units that are monitored by the state, they find out about a concern and then notify us and we notify the provider. So some things have timeframes around how quickly we need to receive information back from you. Like we said, we are getting ready to launch this database. We've actually had 2 providers doing some testing for us in it. In the next week or so, we'll be rolling out training around the database. We're submitting contact information to the developer now. You will need to enter a business associates agreement with them. So because it contains PHI, but all the information will be forthcoming in the next week or so.
Mommy.
The next set of incentives are really around the things that will get us over the finish line with the DOJ settlement. So looking at incentive payments for the number of newly members housed for your teams, for your provider agencies, number of individuals rehoused, so individuals have lost housing and now are on a new housing search. Utilization of the B3 one-time transitional costs, which I believe Amy may have touched on briefly, but will be covered in more detail in the upcoming training. And that is really funding that is provided by the state through the NCOs to help with some of those initial move-in items. So furniture and those things that members need for their initial move experience. Helping us work, ensure that members are passing those housing inspections so that if you either just in your work with individuals with those TCL checklists or noticing issues of concern, that you are proactively helping them mitigate those issues so that it does not become a major problem at the time of inspection. We're also looking at a measure to include ensuring, to incentivize providers that you're really working with members around avoidable separation. So having guests, squatters or guests that are not on their leases, smoking in units that are non-smoking, property damage to units, and infestations. So really helping to mitigate those issues that lead to avoidable separations if they're caught early and often, and you're doing things, working with the members to address those issues. One of the pillars for the settlement agreement is the number of TCL individuals who are engaged in IPS supported employment and who attain competitive employment. And so really looking at increasing the number of referrals and working with IPS providers on engagement to really get TCL individuals involved in this service. You heard Larissa talk about the benefit of individuals moving to those federally funded vouchers. So there will be an incentive for the number of individuals that you're able to help transition to a federal funded voucher. One of the other things that I'm hoping I can get approval to do some incentive payments for providers on is around trainings. We offer a number of trainings. Either we have a housing academy and an employment collaborative that are hosted by UNC Institute for Best Practices. There's the entire Better at Home series through Alliance. There's office hours for the Better at Home series, and there will be other trainings that we may host around harm reduction and other issues. There are benefits to this training, or not only as far as improving your skill development towards working with individuals, which also then improves your skill development toward being able to attain all of those metrics for incentive payments, but they also benefit you around act fidelity reviews and how you're able to incorporate the skills that you'll learn in your practices and services to individuals that are reflected in those act fidelity reviews. All MCOs will be restarting in the near future CST, permanent supportive housing evaluations. So all of the skills and education and materials and tips and things that we're able to provide through all of these trainings also benefit you not only with service to members, but then also reflected back on your teams and your agency's abilities to increase performance on act fidelity reviews, have good standing on the CST permanent supportive housing evaluations. So I have submitted all of this to our leadership and finance department to look at the financial targets that I'm hoping that I've assigned to each incentive payment. So there'll be more information to come about that, but I did want to give you all a preview of other ways in which kind of doing this work will help. We want to be able to incentivize providers to help us, particularly in Mecklenburg, get over this hump over the next 5 months as we are staffing up TC staff, but as well as being able to work in new and different ways with members, and then to get over, past this hump for the DOJ settlement review. Are there any questions? If anyone has any questions, please just feel free to jump right in or put it in the chat. Okay, well, barring no questions, that is the end of our training for today. Thank you for participating. There will be more, I believe information has either come out or there'll be more information coming out with all of the information we provided today, as well as the next series of the Better at Home trainings in that schedule. And feel free to reach out to us as needed. Look forward to working with all of you all. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Larissa, when is the next, there was a question about when's the next training?
It's next Wednesday from 10:30 to 11:30. And it is.
Will that go out today or has it already gone out?
It was attached to the invite yesterday, a reminder, but I'll send it out again today with some of the other supporting documentation. You will get a certificate. It will come from our ODL office. And it will also, I will have them go ahead and include all these other documents. So you should get them twice, just because we know things kind of get lost in the shuffle. And going forward for the next 7 weeks, it'll be every Wednesday from 10:30 to 11:30. And we have the link, we'll have the link on the, it's on our website. And I had sent out the link earlier about the TCL documents, but that's all of our Better at Home training is listed there too. You can click on the link. We already have trainings that we have uploaded in there. So if your team just wants to go through and get familiar with some of the trainings that we've already done, those are included there as well. So
yes,
it is officially from 10:30 to, you said 11:30.
10:30 to 11:30. We try to make them, we try to stick to that. Sometimes it's a little less. We don't try to go over.
Okay, because I know it was originally sent out in my calendar for 12 to 1:30. That's why I wanted to make sure I went ahead and changed the times.
Oh, okay. So let me go back in and make sure that I didn't do something incorrect on the Zoom link. Let me check that.
And yes, existing staff, new staff are all, anyone who's going to be working with the individuals and supporting their tenancy and or employment goals, or please have them participate in these trainings.
Yes. Yeah, so they're all 10:30 to 11:30. I will correct that on the Zoom. So thank you for pointing that out. Thanks. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.